Superintendent of the Fairport Central School District. I'm excited to welcome everyone here who has taken time out of their schedules to either participate as a panelist or observe as a community member as we grapple with the idea of what 21st century learning looks, sounds, and feels like in our school district. If you all close your eyes for a moment, I want you to think back to your school years. I want you to think back to what school looked like, what it sounded like, what it felt like, all the way up elementary, middle, it wasn't a middle, it was a junior high, high school, and if you went beyond that, what were some of the things that you experienced? What did learning look like? What were the priorities going through school? What was the social, economic, and political drop that affected how we lived our lives? Now fast forward to 2018. The word that comes to my mind continually is exponential. Things are moving at a faster rate. There are jobs that our students are going to be involved in or engaged in that haven't even been invented yet. How they learn is much different. The way that their brains are developing are much different than the way our brains developed, but yet they come to school every single day. We are in exciting times in Fairport. We are given the opportunity for the past year and a half to reimagine our schools. Last year we had a district advisory council where we had over 120 people participate on our committee and over 3,000 people engaged as we talked about our educational programming, our finances as a school district, and our use of our facilities. This is just another iteration of the district advisory council's work with reimagining our work for our students as we create 21st century learners. Now, what does that mean? There's so many different iterations and definitions of what 21st century learning is. And I truly believe as we go through this and as we develop this, we will continue to define it the way it needs to be defined in Fairport. And that's why I'm excited to have this conversation, because we have a multidisciplinary group of people who, from the professional world, our students, and we have an incredible keynote speaker who's going to help frame the conversation. And then we're looking to engage you, the community, in a conversation. So as we continue to build vision statements, as the Board of Education continues to build their vision for the school, it's informed with the feedback that we receive here tonight, and as we learn as a community together, what exactly does whole child mean? As a school district, what exactly does 21st century learning looks like, and how does that impact what happens every single day in our schools? Because as we were all envisioning, as we started out in my little vignette, school looks different, it feels different. The things that students experience on a daily basis is different. As a result, we're obligated to give our students the very best experiences so they're prepared socially, emotionally, and physically to enter the next phases of their journey. So without further ado, I am going to ask Ms. Cass Wheeler to come up and introduce our student panel so we can begin our discussion. But I'm proud to be here. I'm proud to be a part of this, and thank you for coming tonight. Cass Wheeler, our Assistant Superintendent for Curriculum and Instruction.
Thank you, Mr. Provenzano. Good evening and welcome. Thank you so much for coming to our discussion tonight. It's my great pleasure to call up to the expert panel three incredible young people. We have with us our asset leaders, Jarmel Glass, 10th grader, Jackson Dietz, also 10th grader, and Lauren Dragoon, 12th grader. Very exciting senior year. These fine young people will share with us their perceptions of their experiences here in Fairport, those experiences that empowered them, as well as their recommendations for our future. So if you folks would come up here, please. Thank you. Accompanying these fine young people is an amazing lady who does an incredible amount of work with our youth. Mrs. Deborah Tandoy has graciously agreed to partner with me to add the voices of these people to our discussion. Mrs. Tandoy.
Thank you, and good evening, everyone. We all are meant to live in a healthy community with healthy youth. Our Fairport District for over 20 years has had a focus on positive youth development through the 40 developmental asset approach. We make it intentional to surround our youth with caring adults in our schools and in our community. And through numerous opportunities like this evening, we empower our youth to have a voice in a meaningful part of our progress in education. Our students develop leadership skills in themselves, and then they teach their peers, which brings us countless students into the conversation. Their collective voices are essential for our success. So tonight, asset leaders Lauren, Jamel, and Jackson will share their experiences and visions. And before we start the questions, I'd like you to each give a little intro about yourself so everyone gets to know you as well as we do.
Hello. My name is Lauren Dragoon, like was said, and I'm a proud senior here at Fairport High School. It's a pleasure being here with you guys all tonight. A little bit about myself, I guess. I am a proud asset leader, like we all represent tonight. I play softball, varsity softball. I'm a second baseman. I also am a student director for Martha Brown's plays. I have been in multiple musicals and plays myself, and much more to go around. So I will now hand it over.
Hi everyone, I'm Jackson. I've been to 5 of the Fairport schools we have here. I've been to JA, Brooks Hill, Martha Brown, Minerva, DeLand, and FHS now. Some quick things about me is I'm a swimmer. I am the treasurer of the Joey Fund Committee, which is a support fund committee for our school for families in need. And I'm also in the Model UN team.
Hello, my name is Jamel. Some people call me Jay, whatever you prefer. I'm also a 10th grader here at FHS, and I began my career here in Fairport as a member of the district's urban suburban program. Some things about myself: I run varsity track for the indoor and outdoor teams, and I just got done with practice. But I enjoy being active, and I think Fairport's helped me build myself in a variety of ways.
Thank you, and thanks for coming out tonight. I know you want to be home studying, but before you get to that, the first thing we'd like to know is if you would share with us a critical experience or experiences from your time in Fairport School. And if each of you want to share and jump in at any time that you want to. So Lauren, would you like to start?
I'll start.
Okay.
So as a senior, I have been through a ton of different events at Fairport. Probably the most critical, I would say, definitely outreach programs such as getting involved with assets has been wonderful. A lot of the volunteer activities that I've done has shaped who I am today, like leadership asset training, where we teach 9th graders about the 40 developmental assets, opening day for teachers and other staff, and then Breakfast of Champions at Martha Brown, where we get to share our insights about high school and just preparing for your future with the middle schoolers. Also, Brotherhood Sisterhood Week. Always love going down to the elementary schools and talking to the first, second graders, whoever they are. They always make my day and make my year. And then I'm part of the Irish Exchange Program this year, which is very, very fun, and that has definitely given me a cultural approach to not only just at Fairport, but everyone in general. So that has been another experience that I am very lucky to have.
Some of the biggest experiences I've had at Fairport are in 6th grade. I joined almost every single club at the school, and it was really busy, but I loved it, and I met so many new people, and it was a really good way just to extend out of my comfort zone a little, get involved in new activities. And then in 7th grade, I started swimming, which continued to build my confidence in the district as, like I could have people to go to if I needed help, or I just needed a friend someday. And the biggest thing for me, I would say, would be joining Assets and CPAC. Assets and CPAC just really made me feel I was having an influence on someone's life. For example, at our LAT sessions, which we hold at the Lions Den, we usually have a session at the end where we go over comments that kids have shared with us throughout our time with them. And some of them are very personal stuff, and we try to help the kids work through that. We inform the guidance counselors at Minerva Deland, and we try to establish a connection with the kids while they're there. And it feels really good just having an influence in someone's life.
I'd probably have to say my biggest thing after coming into Fairport would have been joining the track team in 7th grade. And just for me personally, coming out to a predominantly Caucasian school district was a very big change from being in a very urban school district, and the setting is very different, which is a good thing. You definitely notice the shift in like the priorities and how much the teachers care about you. But I would have to say that it was hard for me to adjust and make new friends and reach out, because it's really hard the younger you are, and it's easier to reach out to people who look like you. So not saying that it's a bad thing or that it's anything wrong, but it's just kind of hard to put yourself out there when you don't have anything in common. But I think from going to the classroom, being on a sports team, everyone's working towards a common goal, no matter what that might be, football, soccer. And I think that feeling like, okay, we're all working to get better, made me feel comfortable to talk to someone, rather it be a team member, a coach, or someone from another team that we're still running track with. So I think my biggest thing was being part of a sports team that's like a family outside of home, and that kind of helped me be able to do other things in Fairport and feel like I had a place here.
Thank you. Now can you share with us some things that you're now doing to prepare for your future?
Yes, of course. So as a senior, I am looking to go to North Carolina for college. So I want to study human relations. So it was not easy just coming up with this major right off the bat. Like it came ever since maybe like 5th grade, I've wanted to be an elementary school teacher. So this year I met with last year I met with Mrs. Hudak, which is our Career and Exploration Center advisor, and I got myself involved in an internship at Jefferson Avenue, and I am a student teacher for a 1st grade classroom. So it is very fun. I love going over there every day and just seeing how the kids develop and grow. I'm sure we probably have many parents in the audiences. It's kind of just like they're my own kids at this point because it's just amazing. Also, I have gotten involved a lot, not only with clubs and other activities, but academically. Really trying to take those AP classes and advance myself. That has really helped. And then taking electives earlier in my high school years to really understand what I wanted to do in the future. Like I took child development and psychology, and that has brought me where I am today of what I want to major in.
I haven't really thought much about where I want to go for college yet, but I definitely do have an idea of what I want to do. Something with communications, because I definitely like communicating with people, spreading a message, maybe something corporate communications. But the biggest way that I've been getting involved with that is doing Assets, which gives me numerous opportunities to public speak, like I am right now. And I also like learning new things like Spanish. I take Spanish. I love Spanish. Spanish is one of my favorite classes. It enables it so you're able to communicate with many more people. And another thing is I always challenge myself with rigorous classes. I take mostly AP and honors classes, and I love challenging myself. I mean, there's a lot of people who don't recognize the what am I trying to say? Okay, I'm just gonna skip over that. But the biggest thing that you need in school that I personally think after 6th grade is that you need to be involved in both clubs and academics. You can't just like cram on your academics or not focus on academics and do all the clubs at school. You have to be able to balance them. Moderation. My mom always tells me you have to be well-rounded. So you have to have a bunch of different qualities that'll make people be attracted to you. And that's why I do Model UN, but I also take AP Global, and I take Spanish, and I also am a swimmer. It's a good balance of activities.
So some of the things that I've done to prepare myself since I've come to 6th grade is I've taken the higher level classes that most people shy away from, and this year I think I take 8 either college, AP, or honors classes. And I think the biggest thing is, and I know we've talked about it before, that when you go to apply for college, they look at what your school offered and what you took. So, okay, you might have a 95 overall average, but you took our Regents classes. So I also think that taking those AP classes, even if you have an 85, is better than having a 99 in a Regents class. And once again, like, just going back to sports, and I know for different people it might be piano or an instrument, which I think is great, but just for me personally, being on a sports team and knowing that's something that I possibly want to do in college has been a big part of staying focused and having a goal, and I know that's something that I want to pursue when I get older. And as far as going to college, I definitely want to do something in the medical field. My dream profession would be a specialty cardiothoracic surgeon, and I've always been interested in medicine, and science and math has always been kind of my knack in which I've been good at. So some of the things that I've been doing is I do some of the pre-college programs over the summer at the U of R. Mrs. Hudak, the Careers and Exploration Advisor, has shown me programs at Highland Hospital, the U of R, and General Hospital, and those have been things I've been able to do to get real life experience, to know if this is something you want to do or not. And I also think that going out and doing internships and things like that are important, because you don't want to apply to college, get in, and then find out that you hate it because you've never been able to go and actually experience it before. Like, you might have seen it on TV, like, oh, that's cool, that's fun, but that's not really what it is when you go into college and you have to stay up till 2 o'clock in the morning studying. And I think that, like what Jackson was saying, being well-rounded and getting yourself into other things besides just all academics or all sports is a good thing, because colleges look at that. You have really good grades, but you don't know how to interact with another person face to face. Or you're the #1 lineman, but you're failing every single last class. So I think that good balance and helping people find that is a really good thing. And outside of my family, my best support system has really been my guidance counselor. Even when I know people feel like, oh, you go to guidance when you get in trouble, but that's really not how it is. If you go to your guidance counselor and they're there to help you. And just being here, and it's November 29th. Yeah, it's November 29th. I've met with Mrs. Howe on multiple occasions just to make sure I'm taking the right classes. And after I took the PSATs to make sure I can check to see what my scores are and what that means and what can I do to get better has been a really big part of it. So preparing early makes you feel a lot less nervous as you go into your most important year, your junior year, when you take those big tests and things like that. So I think preparation and having a really good school support system is important.
Thank you. So we've really heard a lot about how you're preparing for the future and how you're engaging in school. So this question is you're preparing, is there anything that you can tell us we need to do a better job at, or things that we need to do for you that we can change so that all your needs are met and all your goals are made a reality? Can you give us some advice, please?
So I think the main thing, reaching out to parents and students at the younger ages. When you talk to a parent of a 10th grade student, they're really kind of not going to listen as much as you would to a parent of a 1st grade student. As a student teacher at the elementary school, I have seen that there definitely are some kids that are supported a lot by their parents and are getting involved early already, but you can definitely tell those kids that aren't as supported that much by their parents already and kind of are slacking on those grades and slacking on learning all of their sight words. And I just feel like it's very important early on to get involved. Parents in the audience here, get involved in your kids' lives, make sure they're going on the right track, because that's something that the teachers have the opportunity to do that too, but it's something that they all can't do. Like, parents have to be involved with it too. That also goes with getting involved with alcohol and other drugs, learning about that early on so we can prevent it. Also, mental stability is very important, learning how to cope with it, learning how your child, what could trigger or affect your child in different ways. So that's very important. When I was looking over the whole child, like what the whole child truly means, I think what we need to focus on is sustainability. We have all these programs. The assets have been working so many years to really teach these 40 developmental assets. We have all these programs, but we just need to sustain them and make sure that we're keeping them and on the right track with them, trying not to add more programs in, because that could be an overload at times.
The biggest thing I find engaging about school is our 21st century learning style. We definitely have taken advantage of all the technological capabilities our district has. Even just like when I was in second grade, I think they installed the smart boards, and that was even just a big jump for me at first, but then it helped a ton because our teacher was able to like make visuals for us. But even not just in terms of technology, but like our curriculums, an advice I would have is, given we have a lot of different word processing softwares and stuff nowadays, it's a lot easier to write essays. And in terms of like English class, when I'm in English class writing an essay, I don't really use, I use like the grammar check on it. I don't really use like the words off of my head, like when I see that little red line under a word. I don't really worry about the, if I can fix it myself. I just worry about, right click and fix it. But that's just an example of things that we can change to adapt around 21st century learning. And, my favorite thing that we've had here is Google Docs. It allows you to, definitely to collaborate with other people on things. Like I was just working with my friend on a timeline project for AP Global, and it was so easy because I could go home and do my part of the project, and he could go home and do his part of the project. It really is a lot better than it was, as Mr. Provenzano was saying, 18, 20 years ago when none of that stuff was around. It's a lot more to collaborate and communicate with people.
So I think my biggest part of being in Fairport and noticing what we could improve would be probably intervention and interaction between students and teachers. And by that I mean, I know our guidance counselors, they monitor your grades, and if you need adjustments or you need help, then they're there. But what I've tend to hear and notice that by the time a teacher comes to talk to you, or if a guidance counselor comes to talk to you about an issue or something, it's already gotten too far, and by then they have to take maybe a more aggressive tone or course of action. And I know, like, being in 6th grade, first coming here in 6th grade, that had a really big impact on me. So knowing that you're being, like, I don't want to say a softer touch, maybe, but, like, having that guidance counselor there who cares about you, and even if you have that one moment where you know that if it's not your mom or your dad or someone else in school, that someone's looking out for you and someone's there, it makes you want to try so much harder each and every day. And I remember in 6th grade, about 6 weeks after starting in Fairport, I wanted to drop out and go back home because I didn't feel like I had anyone in school to come and help me. But reaching out to your guidance counselor was probably the best happy mistake that I ever made. And ever since then, going to my guidance counselor when I have a problem, or even when you feel like you had a really long day and mom or dad just won't understand because they don't take the classes that you do, or they don't interact with the same people that you do, I think it's a big part of it. And kind of like on a side note, I really think that since we have school Gmail accounts and it saves everything from 6th grade up until you graduate, I think more of this homogeneous interaction between classes is really important. Like, I know some teachers, they use Remind, and then some teachers use this app, and then some teachers use that app. But I've had the 1 or 2 teachers that use Google Classroom, where you can assign work and leave notes for kids. And I think, well, if we have Google accounts, why wouldn't we just use this? And I've seen a lot of students come into school and they say, oh, I didn't know the homework, or my internet wasn't working, or anything, something like that. So they can get away with not doing homework, and then they wonder why they fail a test because they haven't done homework for 3 weeks straight, and then they get to the test and they're like, wait, no, I wanted a 99, but you got a 62. So having homework where you can print it out, look at it, I think is a really big part, even though it tells the kids, oh, you don't have an excuse to not do the homework, but now the homework's there and you can shoot your teacher an email on it, and Google Slides, Google Docs, all of those things are really helpful, and it's all streamlined because if you log into one app, you log into all of them, and it helps the school process run a lot easier.
Well, thank you. I think you've given us some great ideas, wonderful feedback, and I'm happy to share with all people and anybody that watches it what an honor and privilege it is to work with our youth of today, because they are incredibly awesome. So thank you very much, and we'll turn it back over to Mrs. Lee.
Thank you so much. That was fantastic. Thank you. Next, I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Kevin Henshin, our Director of Staff Development.
I've hit that magic age where I need the readers. Good evening. We have the privilege and honor this evening to have Dr. Robert Dillon with us, who will be providing some keynote remarks. Dr. Dillon is an educator, an author, and a consultant. He has served as an educational leader throughout the St. Louis area over the last 20 years as a teacher, principal, and director of innovation. And I'm sure he'll clarify that last role with you a little bit later. Dr. Dillon has a passion to change the educational landscape by building excellent, engaging schools for all students. Dr. Dillon has had the opportunity to speak throughout the country, has had local, state, and national conferences invite him, as well as sharing his thoughts and ideas in a variety of publications. He is the author of 4 books on best practices in learning. At this time, I would like to give a warm Fairport welcome to Dr. Robert Dillon.
I'm the AV guy's worst nightmare, so I'm going to be all over the place. So we'll see how this goes. Can I get everybody to stand up for a second? So we get the mic working. There we go. Can everybody take their phones out for a second and find a picture on your phone that makes you smile? Hopefully that's not too hard. If you don't have your phone, just play along. It's okay. And then show that picture to somebody real quick. Show that picture to somebody real quick and let them know what that picture's all about. Go ahead. Do that real quick. We'll get going here. All right, thank you for doing that. I appreciate you coming back together. Go ahead and have a seat. Can you imagine this? Can you imagine if everyone in the Fairport community had 5 to 10 pictures on their phone that at any given time they could take out and say, this is what's amazing and this is what's happening in our schools right now? What happens if we challenged all of our teachers, all of our students, all of our parents, all of our community members to always have 5 to 10 images of amazing things happening at this school district on their phone at any point in time? Because we know what happens, right? There are schools that say, oh, did you hear what happened at school today? And it's like the 1% stuff, right? Like there aren't every day when people pick up chairs and throw them across the room, but we've all heard those crazy stories. The stuff that's really happening are the types of pictures, the types of students you heard on an everyday basis. Now, I get a chance to see a lot of schools around the country. Hope my clicker works. And the easiest schools to work with are these, the ones that say, we are struggling, come help us. That's not this school district, but that is the type of school district that can get caught in a trap, right? Things are going pretty well. We got really good kids. They talk a good game. They're doing some pretty good things. I heard about a bunch of different programs happening, and people get caught in a rut. It's good. It's good. We have a good place. You've been to our schools. It's good. And no one's pushing for that next level. And what we find in school after school after school is a trap happens. That you rest on your laurels, you stick with what you're doing, you stick to your guns, and then all of a sudden you're too far behind to catch up. So it's that continuous improvement model that I hope that you hear come out of these ideas today. And so I get a chance to see a lot of schools, and too many schools that I know live in this world. Inertia, momentum, and tradition. Right? We've been doing it that way. We're used to doing it that way. We've always done it that way. And it's hard to break that. And it's little things. It's a bell schedule. It's the way we welcome kids in the building in the morning. It's the way we schedule kids. It's the way we think about learning. It's the way we engage with our community. We always have sent a newsletter out. Yeah, does anybody read it? You know what, we always send email out, yeah, your open rate's like 12%, right? And so we just keep doing the same thing, and we get caught in that cycle of doing just good things for kids when there's an opportunity to do amazing things for kids. Here's a couple of other traps, and tell me if you ever get caught in these. When I went to school, things were different. They were pretty great back then. And you forget about all the kids that it really wasn't good for, because probably the people sitting in this room had an okay school experience. It may not have been the best, but you have these moments you remember. It's like glory days, like Bruce Springsteen, right? Like you remember, like, yeah, that was a good time. So we get caught in nostalgia. We get caught in these old mental models, right? Of this is what school looked like for us. If I asked you to get out a piece of paper and draw a classroom, many people would draw 25 desks, a teacher desk, and a chalkboard, right? That's the mental model we've had of a classroom forever. How do we break those mental models? How do we see things differently? How do we draw those? How do we do that image-wise? And then the other thing we fall in the trap of is over the last 30 years, an amazing amount of learning research has emerged. We've stuck kids' heads in fMRI machines, right? We know that things are different, but we're not engaging around that research. We're saying, well, I know the research says that, but do we really need to teach reading like that? Do we really need to teach math like that? What is this crazy new math that we're starting to teach? So we can't get caught in these traps. And that's my message to you, is that let's look around the country and see what unites folks, because I believe this, is that innovation is everywhere. And we're seeing it in school after school after school. And there are things that you're doing that are amazing right now. But there's some things that keep me hopeful. And there's some things that I think are an arc that you could consider as a school district of, are we doing this? Are we doing enough of this? Can we do more of this? The first is this. Do you have this culture of yes? Right? Too many school organizations have a tendency to say no to ideas. And I truly believe that good ideas die on their own. If a teacher walks down a hall with an amazing idea, it might look like this. I want to buy a $70 thing. And someone says, great, you have to get your principal to sign off on that. Okay, I got that. The curriculum director's got to sign. Okay, all right. All right, now the finance people have to get, yeah, it's $50. I'm not even going to do it. Right? Is that the type of structures and systems that get in the way of saying yes to people? It's stuff we don't even notice. And so we find things like this. I had a teacher come up to me and said, I want kids to climb in that tree. I was a middle school principal at the time, and I said, oh, I did say I was going to say yes to all the ideas. So instead of saying yes, but, because yes, but is just a waste of a word, right? That's really no. So I said, all right, let's figure it out. And I would just encourage all the teachers and all the educators and the community members in the room, if someone brings an idea about change, say, all right, let's figure it out. Because bad ideas will die on their own, but if you keep being an idea killer, you will not have an idea-rich district that's open and ample and just ready for change. And so that's what I'm seeing across the country in schools that are doing amazing things, that are not struggling, doing pretty good for kids, but are really trying to push forward and do some things that are amazing. The second thing that I see is this, is a deep sense of entrepreneurial spirit. They understand that kids as change makers is what every community needs. They need kids that can be civic leaders. They need kids that can step forward and say, no, that's not how it should be. And that starts with kind of this social entrepreneurship. I tell the story of this young lady. She came to me and said, Dr. Dillon, I'm going to need you to open up Etsy on our network. I was like, oh, why would I open up Etsy on our network? She goes, well, my small business that I run requires me to check Etsy many times during the day. And I said, oh, that's cute. You have a small business. And I shouldn't have said that, because she said, yeah, last year it grossed $12,000 as a sophomore. And she said, but most of my sales aren't in the United States. They're mostly in Hungary, and not Budapest, more the rural areas. And I was like, holy cow, we have young entrepreneurs all over our schools. We have schools around the country that are saying this. Before all of our high school kids leave, we want to make sure that they market something. Because the surest way to get rid of a bad digital footprint is to make sure kids are marketing something online. Is it a song they created, a book they wrote, jewelry they created, an art project, whatever it is? Could we think about this school district as an entrepreneurial incubator? Do you have entrepreneurs in the community that could be entrepreneurs in residence in your buildings? What else am I seeing? I'm seeing a deep sense of syncing. And let me tell you what that syncing looks like. It makes sure that teaching methods, technology, and the learning space itself are being developed and in sync. I see too much of this. I see a school that says we really want to have technology-rich environments. And then you have kids sitting in rows staring at the back of each other's heads with screens. We know that's not so good. So how do we change the learning environment? Then I see people change all the learning environment. They go, wow, this is pretty furniture. This is awesome. We have technology. And the teaching methods are all direct instruction. It's not in sync. And so oftentimes districts will put a lot of effort into one of these things and all the rest will fall by the wayside. The best school districts in the country are finding ways to sync those sorts of things. The reason you're here and the reason I'm positive and hopeful is that there is a deep interest in community partnerships. Schools do not have enough resources to do the complex job that they're being asked to do. That is honest. There aren't schools all over the country just wasting money. What they need, though, are deep amounts of community partnerships. And partnership means this to me. Partnership doesn't mean, oh, that's really cute, I'll help the school. That's called a donation. And we want those too, but partnership means this, that you truly see students as an asset that can contribute to the work that you do. Back in St. Louis, we are partners with Washington University because Washington University sees the assets that our students are. They bring our students into their laboratories because we bring ideas to the table that they can no longer have because they don't have an amateur mind. They have these mental models already built up. That's the type of partnership that really pushes people forward and the best districts are doing. We are also seeing an effort to solve real-world problems, right? If you look at a place like the Iowa Big School in Cedar Rapids, Iowa, students go to the Iowa Big School. They can get 14 of their high school credits there, and they are there to solve business problems that community businesses bring to the table. So when this first started, this was a great program, right? And then they were desperate to businesses. Bring us a problem. We'll work on it. We'll do whatever. And now it's to a point where the kids have businessmen presenting them and they're like, I don't think that you're ready to come to us yet. Why don't you go back, right? But the emergence of the fact that students are solving the real world problems in Cedar Rapids, Iowa, wow, that's something here that people could hang their hats on, this idea that real world problems. If I ask the people in this room, do you know the 5 biggest community problems that you have? Many of you would be able to make the list. Many of you haven't thought about it, and I know they wouldn't be in sync. There's a community conversation. Because if you could come together and say, these are the community problems that we have, you could start to build students into solution making around that. That's a whole different way of thinking. But those are the things that take schools to a whole different level. We had one of our students talk about creation of audio and video and saying those sort of pieces earlier. This is a difference maker. Every Fortune 500 company, every nonprofit organization, every school district in the country needs content. They need video, they need audio, and kids are primed to be great producers of audio and video. When they start as kindergartners doing that, first graders, second graders making video, that's what people need. They need content. So how do you give them space? How do you give them time to create and produce amazing audio? One of your superintendents here in the state of New York said that I want to make sure that every one of my seniors leaves and can make great podcasts and great video. And they know what that looks like because I know that that's a tool that everyone's going to need. Everyone needs marketing. Everyone needs someone that can do amazing communication. This is the difference maker stuff that schools around the country are really leaning into when they're in good shape, but they could really be so much better. There's another focus that projects and classrooms are about authentic audience. You know, this is what Grandparents' Day was, right? We said to kids, now, is this good enough for your grandfather? Here, go back and do this again, right? Like we handed it back to him and said, go do this again. Because kids turn in things that are good enough for teachers, but they don't turn in their best work. So how do we get where kids are turning in their projects to an authentic audience? If you're doing a physics project, shouldn't an engineer be looking at that? If you're doing a language project, how about getting a native French speaker to take a look at that? How about if you're a first grader and you're doing something that you have a seventh grader looking at that? Who is your authentic audience? And as we build more of those things in, the quality of our projects go up. The things that kids are able to produce go through the roof. We see things like senior capstones. We see kids getting up and presenting. We see amazing things. We had beehives at our middle school. And it was scary because we had the kids in the suits and the EpiPens everywhere. We just ran around with EpiPens all the time. But what we did is we took two things. We took our honey and our wax and we sold it at the farmer's market. We taught kids how to be small business owners, how to market, how to take those things, how to ask people for a sale, ask people for money, figure out all of those things. And the other thing we did is we took our honey to the state fair. Now, I know it sounds ridiculous, but there's actually a rubric on what good honey is for the state fair in Missouri. But our kids came back and said, okay, what we learned was this. Our honey isn't viscous enough, and it's not the right color. I'm like, what are you talking about? Next year, we have to change this temperature in our like, they were into it, right? You change the audience from the teacher in the teacher's desk to somebody in the community. It changes the way that kids engage. And here's what we know. Kids that are engaged and kids that are joyful in their learning will achieve more. The research tells us there's a linear line. You have instruction that promotes that. You have technology that approaches that. You have great learning spaces that promote that. Engagement, joy, achievement. You can draw the line across. And these are the things that are setting people apart. A couple others, and I'll finish up here. There's an amazing piece about the need to humanize the learning process. We still have too many structures and procedures in our schools that feel, if you close your eyes, like you're in a prison. The way lunch lines work, the way kids walk through the hall, the way we instruct kids that you have to interlock your fingers as they walk through the halls. Maybe I hope that doesn't happen here. Or put bubbles in your mouth, right, as you walk down the hall as a kindergartner. I'm just telling you that we're doing things to kids that don't promote them as human beings. And we want to know about social emotional learning. We need to be able to do some of those things. So here's my metaphor. In every classroom that I work with, I spend a lot of time with teachers working in their classrooms, optimizing the space that kids have for their classrooms. And I said, here's the metaphor I use. What if your school told kids, told parents, and told the community, we want our school to feel like a nest. We want it to care for kids, we want it to feed kids, and we want it to prepare them to fly. I think it's a powerful metaphor. What if we all got underneath a metaphor about our schools? One of the schools I worked with was school as a museum. So they had museum opening nights, and that was their metaphor. We had school as expedition, and that meant that kids were learning beyond the walls of their classroom. We had school as apprenticeship, where we saw school and community as a true partnership. What could the metaphor of the excellence of Fairport that's yet to come be buried underneath? I see this, the STEM mindset. Now, I'm against this whole science, technology, engineering, math being this like magic thing on a pedestal. Like, I really just don't believe that. But what I believe is the inquiry mindset. The idea that we know how to ask questions, that we question things, that we test things, that we keep coming back around to find answers and realize our truth today isn't possibly the truth tomorrow. That's an important thing for us to continue to grow into. And that comes from that type of learning. This is in Huntsville, Alabama, where they're the home of Green Power USA. And I've never seen kids sweat over the top of an Excel spreadsheet until I was in Huntsville, Alabama. This is an electric car that they built. It looks magnificent, and you get really close to it. It's a lot of duct tape. But they race it around the property of the school. And I've never seen kids try to figure out, well, why is it slowing down between lap 1 and lap 2? Let's race it again. Let's try it again. That is authentic science. That is testing. That is thinking. That's the type of STEM mindset that we can start with 5-year-olds and take beyond. These are the things that separate school districts and make them different and take them to a next level. It's not about having a maker space. Maybe you have some maker spaces in the district. It's really about saying we have a maker culture. We have a culture of kids that want to make and create and design. Because if we have kids that create, make, and design in all of our classes, We're going to make learning really sticky. We're going to continue to move folks forward. And the best school districts that I get to visit have a maker culture. You go to a place like Charlottesville, Virginia, and see Albemarle County schools. They have a maker culture everywhere. There's stuff being made everywhere. This is Montour High School in Pittsburgh. They told the kids that congregated in this area, if you're going to stand here every morning from 7:30 to 7:45, you might as well do something productive. So they built a deck, right? Put them to work, right? Do something. And so the kids love this. They own this space. You know what never happens in this space? Trash never gets left there because the kids own it. Right? Look at the hallways in this building. What would it be if kids started owning the hallways and it started feeling like places of learning that were here and they took on the maker culture of the hallways in all of our buildings? So there's many more. Lots of silver buckshot in education, right? No silver bullets. I truly believe that. I've spent 25 years looking for these little pieces of grain that make the difference. And I think these are some of them. But what I know is this, that school districts that get it right are engaging a broad coalition of people, that they're super focused, that we are dedicated to not being the same place we are today. I think there's a lot of people that are like, if we could just be the same place we are today. But you can't. Things are moving too fast beyond the work and things we're trying to do. The second thing is they're determined. They're deeply determined that this is their mission. This isn't a job they come to. This is something they're deeply determined that I'm going to leave my stamp, my legacy on a whole bunch of kids in a community and what's going on. And that ultimately they're unified around the work. And that's what my hope is that we can continue to have conversations about the really important things so that not only our sophomores that are sitting here and our seniors that were here, but our littlest people that haven't even come through the doors yet have this amazing opportunity to choose to stay here the rest of their life if they want to and be a global citizen or travel the world and do whatever they want. I mean, that has to be our hope, is that that's what kids are headed to do. Thank you for giving me a few minutes of your time, and thank you for being here tonight. It's a big deal, so thank you. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Dr. Dillon. At this time, I would like to invite our panelists up to the front of the room. There are cards marking your seats. If you would like to join us at this time, we would greatly appreciate that. While they are doing that, I would like to take this moment to give a huge thank you to so many people this evening that helped make this evening possible. To our superintendent, of course, to our Board of Education for their continued support and dedication to our students and our staff, to our administrators who on a daily basis are supporting our students and for being here tonight, our parents, community members, our Monroe One BOCES School Improvement Team who's helping us this evening, our custodial staff, as well as our administrative assistants, and of course, our panelists this evening. We have quite a diverse panel, and I'm going to allow them to actually introduce themselves in just a moment, but just so that you know how this is going to work this evening, we're going to do 2 rounds of questions and invite you to listen, to take notes. There will not be a question and answer period around this. What we will be doing afterwards is you will be given some directions as to how you can debrief about your thoughts in terms of what you're hearing this evening through our panelists. You do have in your folders some biographical information, so I encourage you to look at those and reference those as our panelists are speaking. And at this time, I would like to ask each one of our panelists if you would take a moment to please introduce yourself, tell us what your current position is, and what led you to the position that you're in right now? What inspired you to where you are currently in your working world? We'll begin with you.
Sure. My name is Jim Bellata, and I'm the branch manager at Lions National Bank, and the president, Lions National Bank in the Barrington branch, and the president of the Chamber of Commerce. And what led me, thank you. What led me to that, I've always had a knack for being involved in
the good of the community, and also I have gone down the path of a local bank where you're able to make a difference with the decisions that are made on the corporate side. So,
Thank you very much.
thank you.
Good evening, everybody. I'm Kathy Hober. I'm the Assistant Superintendent for Instructional Programs at Monroe One BOCES, which is the BOCES that supports this school district as well as 9 others in the region. And I think I would say what inspired me to transition to the position that I'm in right now is to really to be able to look at education and how we support and serve students in a different way. At BOCES, we serve many different populations of students, and we do so in very unique and innovative ways. So that's what has inspired me.
My name is Jim McGaffin. I'm a sales manager at NIMAT Machine Tool in Fairport. And we're the Haas distributor for New York State. We sell machine tools. And Haas, if you don't know who they are the largest manufacturer of machine tools in North America. They're in California. They're a $2 billion company. And we work with over 2,300 schools across America in providing them with discounted machines, training services for the technical teachers, so on and so forth. The inspiration is that as you look around, there's a machine tool behind everything you touch. Whether it's the car you drive, the airplane you fly in, the needle that you got your flu shot with, the shirt or blouse that you're wearing, that was made on a machine that the parts to make that machine were made by a machine tool. And a machine tool, like a human being, is one of the few things that can reproduce itself because it can make the parts for another machine. So that's the broad spectrum that you take a look at. It makes for quite an exciting industry and career.
You guys heard from me, but I'll just talk a little about why I'm doing what I'm doing. I just have a deep social justice mission, and part of my work in the St. Louis area has been deeply about providing equitable education for all kids and making sure kids have opportunities. And so one of the beautiful things is now getting able to do that around the country as well. And so that's what has me in public education for as long as it has.
I'm Rajendra Raj. I'm a professor of computer science at RIT. And before I came to RIT, I was working on Wall Street for about 9 years, building software that's still used, okay, to make money. Okay, obviously, not for me, but for others. And but there was something missing. I was always interested in being in education, so I came to RIT. And I think somebody used the nice phrase, I'm going to be using this a lot, the happy mistake. So I made the happy mistake of asking somebody who lived in the Fairport district, okay, where should I live? So I live here, and I think education has been really important. I do like to make sure the next generation and the generations that come are educated properly. And for the last few years, I've been focusing on 2 of the hottest buzzwords in computing, data science and cybersecurity, and that's really been my focus.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Keith Greer, and I am, in my professional world, an executive and recovery coach and trainer. From the first day of kindergarten to the last day of 12th grade, 4 times a year, I received a report card, and on that report card, there was always a comment that said, Keith socializes too much. I feel great love for the school district I went through, but we all know that was not on there to help me celebrate my advanced interactional skills. But it's not a coincidence that I do what I do. And it's not a coincidence that I've spent my life in the mental health field, in the clinical field, in the coaching field. I am a recently retired school social worker with Webster Schools after 30 years. This was destiny. I don't even know if I can say it was inspiration. This is what I was meant to do. And I'm one of those lucky people who most of the days of my career, over 35 years, work has not felt like work. What keeps me here is there is nothing in the world that fascinates me more than the interaction between human beings. The complexity of it, the fact that it is, for most of us, the source of some of the greatest pleasure, satisfaction, and meaning in our lives. And through my career, to be a part of that and facilitate those conversations, and to just know what research is now telling us, because just like in some of the more technical fields, what we know now about exactly what happens in interaction and conversation on a neurological level even is so far beyond what we knew 5 to 10 years ago. It's fascinating stuff. Keeps me up at night thinking about it.
Hi, I'm Diane Oliver. I'm the Dean of the College of Arts and Sciences and Professor of Religious Studies at Nazareth College. And something of a circuitous route to get here, not only in Rochester at Nazareth College, but being a religious studies professor and a dean. My undergraduate degree is in computer science and math. I did software development for 13 years. I figured out it wasn't what I wanted to do when I grew up, partially because for me, I found out that I needed my work to connect to who I was. And while I enjoy computer science, and many people may find that exact feeling in doing computer science, including probably Dr. Raj, that wasn't true for me. And so I went back to school and went to graduate school and studied something that was more connected to who I was. I tend to pour myself into my work. How I ended up in Rochester, New York, you may already tell that by my accent I'm not from around here. But part of how I ended up here was a job came open at Nazareth College. And the mission that Nazareth has of access to education, of social justice, of commitment to quality of education and service to the community were things I cared about deeply. And that was part of the who I was that I was looking for in my work. And that's how, after spending 16 years in Indiana, I ended up here. Although I'm originally from Alabama, if that wasn't clear in the accent part of it. So.
Hello. Good evening, everybody.
Good evening.
Good evening, everybody.
Good evening.
All right. So my name is Adrian Hale, and I'm the Senior Manager of Workforce Economic Development and Education Initiatives at the Greater Rochester Chamber of Commerce. And in a past life, I was in the U.S. Marine Corps, did 5 years in the Marines, 2 deployments to Afghanistan, you're welcome. 2 deployments to Afghanistan, came back, still had a passion to serve, Air Force Reserve. But during my time in the Marine Corps, and even before that, I grew up in the city of Rochester. And I grew up in a typical inner city household where people who look like me face a number of challenges just because of the house they're born into and their zip code and all the social determinants that will impact their lives before they can ever actually make a decision. And so when we talk about what led me to this point, I would say, as a young man going through the hardship of being poor and black in Rochester, trying to figure out how would I be somebody who could just not make life better for myself and my family, but for everyone. One of the most important things that happened in my youth was a mayor at the time, by the name of Bob Duffy, got up one day during his State of the City address, and he talked about the importance of education. And the results of our school district were not satisfactory enough for him, and they weren't the kind of results that our young people deserved, and so he started his crusade for mayoral control. And so for me, seeing such a provocative and aggressive move of reform inspired me right then to want to one day be a change agent. And I think when I graduated high school, that led me to the Marines. And I studied hard, and I got to go to Yale, and I got to study these problems more in depth. And during my time there, I was an undergraduate fellow at the Institution for Social and Policy Studies, which is our 50th anniversary. I'll be going back there in a couple of weeks to speak again about the work I've been doing at the Chamber of Commerce. But education is so key because, to me, the promise of the American experiment rests on it. Our democracy requires an educated electorate to make conscious and intentional decisions that impact all of our lives and the quality of our society. And so for me now, coming back home to Rochester and working under Bob and working with our school district, everything from career and technical education to diversity and inclusion and even some non-instructional things like budgeting and working with our school board members, helping them get elected and counseling them. We all deserve the promise of a high-quality education so that we all can not just contribute, but reach our maximum potential.
Thank you, everybody. And as you can see, we have a rich variety of folks here tonight that represent different positions in the community, local and beyond. So we'll go ahead and begin with our first round. And we're beginning with you again, Jim. If we can maybe get the microphone back down. We tried to tailor questions this evening that hopefully showcase some of what each one of these individuals does and how they contribute to our world. So Jim, what should people be excited about in terms of work and careers in the future? And what does it mean for our students?
You know, I think the thing that most be excited about is the advances of technology and how they're going to affect the workplace. And I say that as I'm probably the least, I'm willing to bet that I'm the least tech-savvy person on this panel here. But in my industry and in the banking world, as well as with the Chamber of Commerce, the tools given with advancements in technology to reach people, the marketing, the new technologies in banking like blockchain that I'm sure a lot of you have heard about. I think they're going to have an impact on the way we do things and the security that we have to do things, which I'm sure Dr. Raj knows firsthand a lot about. And I think the impact of that is really going to help with efficiency in speeding along things and communicating at a much faster pace in the business world.
Okay, thank you very much. Dr. Hauber, based on your work in this region, what are some promising trends that you see in Monroe County specifically and the surrounding area in terms of career development and opportunities in the future?
So one of the most promising trends in our region currently is the work that is being done around building partnerships, which goes right along with what Dr. Dillon was talking to us about earlier, in really looking at the partnerships between the K-12 world, the higher ed, and then also the public sector and industry. These partnerships are providing opportunities for students to participate in more college coursework than we've ever seen before, thus earning college credits to prepare them as they enter into the next stage of their life, being just that much further ahead of where possibly we were when we were at that age. But more importantly is the internship and co-op opportunities that we're providing to our students. I think Jay, one of our student representatives, talked about some things that he was able to participate in. And those internships and opportunities are really just a great way for students to be able to experience those real life authentic tasks that are going to open up more and more opportunities for them as they progress into career and or into college that's of their interest. This certainly comes to light in most of the most popular and fastest growing careers in our region. We see healthcare and manufacturing being big ones for us, and then also skilled trades. So to every superintendent and to every business official that will listen to me, I am constantly telling them that they need to stop spending money on desks and chairs, and they need to start investing money in work experiences and transportation to get kids out and in the community and doing the things that are ultimately going to prepare them.
Thank you, Dr. Hauber. Jim, in your opening remarks, you talked about some specific things, some everyday things that we have in our world that require machine and manufacturing to be involved. And be it that we had a crystal ball to be able to look into the future and know where manufacturing is going, what in your estimation, according to your thoughts, is the future in the field of advanced manufacturing, and what does it mean for our students?
Well, I think this is a kind of a golden age for students in manufacturing, because there's going to be a shortage of approximately 2 to 3 million jobs by 2025. Part of the reason for this is that most of the people who are in manufacturing look like me. And I've termed it the silver tsunami, because so many of our customers or businesses and manufacturers will tell you that they're losing 25 to 30% of their workers in the next 5 years. Now, it's not just the bodies that are walking out the door, but what? It's the experience that's walking out the door. And that's going to lead us into the technical revolution that's going to continue with automation and robotics and things of that nature. There's a misnomer out there. Everybody says, oh, you're going to put in robots, you're going to destroy the workforce, there's going to be no jobs. Why do I want to go into manufacturing? There won't be any jobs. The robots are going to do them all. There's only one problem. Somebody's got to make the robot do what he's supposed to do. They have to program them. They have to maintain them. And it is not a job killer. It's a job maker. What you're going to be doing with robotics and automation, artificial intelligence is going to come along and be a major player, is you're going to eliminate the mundane, repetitive jobs and the low-paying jobs that are there, and you're actually going to have higher-paying careers in manufacturing due to the automation.
Wonderful. Thank you. Dr. Dillon, get a lengthy one here. Brace yourself. Scientific knowledge is creating new opportunities and solutions that can enrich our lives while at the same time fueling disruptive waves of change in every sector. Unprecedented innovation in science and technology, especially in biotechnology and artificial intelligence, is raising fundamental questions about what it is to be human.
I got the easy question.
Yeah. Given this change, how do you see the impact of human relationships, empathy, and citizenship, and how can we best educate our young people to thrive in these new environments?
Yeah, it's interesting. I think there's a little bit of a scare and a fear about some of this, like the world's going to run away and we're not going to be human anymore. But there is a huge need to teach children how to look somebody in the eye and have a moment and care. I had a moment last night. I was in an Uber last night, and Chinese national driving me, great young man, who got a text while we were driving. And the text said, "My sister died in the last 30 minutes." And a few moments went by. I had read the text. He had read the text. He said, "What words do I use to talk about what you just saw?" And I realized the language barrier was keeping him from having an empathetic moment and being able to say the right thing via text. There was a lot of complexity of that. My wife is a grief social worker, and I said, "I just had a grief moment." She was like, "Oh, I'm happy you finally had an emotion." Yeah, but we need to be able to teach kids those skills of how you respond to someone, how you care for someone, because those are the separators. And I think that that is what makes us fully human. And that also means making sure we're continuing to connect to the natural world. And I think that's a big piece of the puzzle. Whether that's play in parks, whether that's time for fresh air. I always talk about balancing green time and screen time. All of that is what truly makes us human. And I think that's going to allow us to go forward if we can do some of those things.
Wonderful. Thank you for your comments. Dr. Raj, we've talked a little bit. The word artificial intelligence has come up in the last couple of comments. Can you comment on how you feel artificial intelligence will impact the jobs of the future for our students?
That's an interesting question. But before I answer the question, let's have a show of hands. How many of you have an Alexa device at home or a Google Home? Is there anyone who doesn't have one? Okay. Okay, but have you used Siri on your iPhone, or have you used Cortana? Okay, so those of you who raised your hands for Siri or Cortana, you can put your hands down. And so what you see here really is initially we had more than half of the audience here has a Google Home or a Alexa device at home. So artificial intelligence is already here. And I wish I had brought my Google Home and kept it right here, because I couldn't do that. I should have done that, actually. It would have been a good visual. But instead, I had to write these things down because I wanted to give you these statistics. Okay. Now, beginning of the 19th century in the US, 80% of the labor market was involved in what profession? Agriculture. Today, do you know what the number is? It's 2%. Okay, I wouldn't remember these numbers, that's why I had to jot these things down. Okay, now, there are two ways of looking at AI. One is, I think Jim spoke about this, and he is hoping that there'll be the high-paying jobs in AI because the routine jobs will go away, but the high-paying jobs to maintain the robots, to design the robots will be there. Okay, but I sort of disagree with one part of what he said, but you need fewer high-paying jobs. Okay, most of the jobs can be mechanized, and you need a lot more robots, but fewer humans to do the job. Okay, so now there are two views of looking at this, and there was a conference at MIT a couple of months ago, and here's a number from there. Most people who spoke at that conference weren't worried about jobs being lost. They thought that most of the jobs required this fancy word, augmentation. So humans would always be needed to augment what the robots or the artificial intelligent devices were going to do. And so most of the audience there and the speakers there weren't scared about what AI is going to do. Now on the flip side, going back to this number I said, if you have a population changing from agriculture to a non-agriculture world, and 80 to 78% of folks had to find something new to do. Okay? And most of us are in that 78%, right? So we all did find something, but this change, okay, now here's the pessimistic view. McKinsey Global, okay, says in the next 10 years, by 2030, as much as 30% of the world's labor market will have to find new jobs. Okay, so I think Lauren was saying something about talking to elementary school kids in the beginning. So those kids, by the time they graduate, will be graduating in the 2030 space and will have to have new careers. Okay, and that is what we really need to be talking about. How do you prepare those students to be ready for whatever is out there?
Thank you, Dr. Raj. Keith, you get a lengthy one too. Brace yourselves.
Thank you.
I know. Unless steered with a purpose, the rapid advance of science and technology may widen inequities, exacerbate social fragmentation, and accelerate resource depletion. In the 21st century, that purpose has been increasingly defined in terms of well-being. But well-being involves more than access to material resources, such as income and wealth, jobs and earnings, and housing. It also is related to the quality of life, including health, civic engagement, social connections, education, security, life satisfaction, and the environment. A whole host of things. What do you see as some of the key challenges from your point of view and from your experiences in your world, Keith, and some possible solutions?
All right, anybody want to think on that for a few minutes? That was an awful lot. One of the first things, one of the challenges and one of the concepts that needs to change is how we, as a culture, define concepts like well-being, fulfillment, satisfaction, meaning in our lives. We grow up, we go to school, we're told do well in school, maybe go to college, get a job, and I do believe that that is still a pretty powerful narrative, that is the be-all and end-all to satisfaction, well-being, and meaning. So in the social science world, when you look at some of the surveys that are out there and the research that is done among the adult population around job satisfaction, the stats are not good. Most people in our culture go off every day to a job that they feel anything from ambivalent about to miserable. If you are one of those lucky folks who goes off every day to something that you love doing, find great meaning in, you're lucky, because that does not appear to be the case for most of us. And for me, in my world, especially in the executive coaching world, that just always gets me curious. What has gone on in our culture over time that has created this, that people get into adulthood, they do this thing, they do it well, but would say, it's not what I thought it was going to be. It's not where I thought I would end up. Or at first it was okay and now it's not. So how do we have conversations with our young adults around those larger concepts of meaning and fulfillment? So some of the things I think about. I've been very slow to say anything negative about technology because I'm always worried that at 59 people will just say, well, you just didn't grow up with it. But some of the research that is starting to come out around the use of technology, again, causes some concern. And I think, and this is not just the young adult population, that we've reached a point where I think sometimes we mistake connection for intimacy. We are well-connected people, well-connected. The research would say, don't know how intimate we are. How many people in our lives are we truly intimate with? A sense of safety, a true sense of emotional connection versus X number of friends, X number of people that are in contacts in my phone. How do we look at that? Well, we can start having some conversations with our kids about something called PERMA, P-E-R-M-A. This comes from the positive psychology folks. And they talk about 5 factors essential to happiness and well-being: positive emotions, engagement, relationships, meaning, and accomplishment. And those are wonderful conversations to have with young adults in all the different ways those 5 concepts could play out in their life, especially the concept of meaningfulness. How do I head into the adult world engaged in activities, work or otherwise, that are truly, profoundly meaningful to me? So what are some conversations that I think would be worthwhile? One conversation that I think would be very worthwhile with our young adults would be to spend more time with them having very direct conversations about their awareness of what their strengths are. Now that sounds pretty simple, but I'm going to ask all of you to think about the following. If we all walked up to 50 random people and we gave them 2 pieces of paper and we said, on this piece of paper I want you to write down a list of all of your strengths, talents, skills, positive attributes, positive characteristics, gifts to the world, and on this piece of paper I want you to write down all of your unresolved issues from childhood and everything you suck at. Which list can most human beings whip off quicker? And I don't know, again, what that says about our culture. That for most of us, we come into adulthood and we are focused on that other list. And yet, the key to satisfaction, happiness, meaning is on the strength list. That's our toolbox. The key to addressing anything on the other list is in our toolbox. And yet, when I ask people, almost every client I work with as a coach, I ask them to do that activity. And they have to create a list of strengths, positive characteristics, attributes, and the list has to have as many items as they are old. And that is exactly the reaction I get. People look at me like I'm crazy. If they're anywhere over 15, they think I'm nuts. That's a conversation I think sometimes we take for granted that kids just know that, and they don't. Kind of a related conversation would be helping kids truly do values clarification, so that they know what are some of the meaningful concepts in my life, what are some of the philosophies that resonate so deep inside me that I can use them to guide my choices about what makes my life right, are some things that we could do. Mentioned empathy. I was struck when Jay was talking about when he first arrived here and his different feeling of difference. We all know what happens in our culture around difference. We tend to move away from it. How cool would it be to help our kids learn as they head into adulthood to move towards difference, to be more empathic? Those would be some of the things that I think could be really helpful.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it. Dr. Oliver, welcome.
As the global population continues to grow, migration, urbanization, and increasing social and cultural diversity are reshaping countries and our communities. How do you see the impact of this on human relationships and citizenships? And how can we best educate our young people to thrive from your point of view?
Well, even just building on the comment you just made about the fact that we don't tend to gravitate toward difference. We tend to gravitate toward people who are like us, or at least people who agree with us. And so you end up with a phenomenon that we find on social media where you have a red feed or a blue feed. You tend to like the people who you agree with on Facebook or on Twitter or on Instagram or anything else that you use in that kind of context. And you get this kind of mutually reinforcing view of the world. Oh, well, oh, yes, I like that. Oh, look, all these other people like that too. And so that kind of allergy, as it were, almost to difference is one of the biggest challenges as we look toward the kind of social and cultural diversity that we have and have always had, but we see more readily and happens more easily, I think, in our current context with travel, with communication that happens instantaneously around the world. And so when it comes to education, we have got to be focused on, whether it's P through 12 or higher ed in my own context, we have got to be focused on how we help students engage people who are other than they are, situations that are other than what they've experienced, and whatever that looks like. Different perspectives, different racial and ethnic identities, different religious backgrounds, different sexual identities. All those types of difference, it's very easy. And so we're sitting here in Fairport, which is, last I checked, the number was about 96% white. I can say nothing. I live about a mile down the road at the corner of East Rochester, Pittsford, and Fairport, and so we're right there with you. And so you think about how then do you have that engagement be intentional around, say, something where you don't have as much diversity. At the same time, you do have a lot of other forms of diversity, probably around sexual identity, probably around experiences that your students have, probably around, even within the context of something like Fairport, around socioeconomic context. There's diversity among those things. Helping our students engage across that difference from the moment they walk into preschool, and to think about it not as something unlike and other and different, but yes, different, but what is the cool thing that's going to happen because I'm engaging difference? We have to model that for students. We have to ensure that the kinds of opportunities we create for them help them engage that difference, whether it's moving to other communities in some of the work that you do with community partnerships, whether it's travel to visit places within driving distance of Fairport and field trips that you take. In my own context of higher ed, we do it through things like study abroad experiences, community partnerships here in the Monroe County and broader areas. Trying to have people kind of out of their comfort zones. But it's also not even just that direct face-to-face experience, though that's important. It's also, who are we reading? What are we studying? Whose art are we looking at? How are we, in fact, attending to the difference that is our reality in ways that start with how we help them think about it? The student who's a first grader or the student who's a junior in college, like the ones that I encounter. So the whole question of how we talk across, how we create and talk in those educational spaces that every level that will honor the kind of diversity that is in our world is how we create and educate the students who are going to be able to live successfully in that world and hopefully make it a different place than the one we sometimes encounter right now, where we are struggling in our country with that level of diversity and with not being able to figure out how the person who's considered a liberal snowflake and the person with the MAGA hat on can even have a conversation. And if we can't do that in our civil context, there's a problem with our educational system, because we should be having those kind of conversations and modeling civil discourse from the beginning. And if we're doing that well, then we're going to help students, help us as a society be able to do those things better.
Thank you, Dr. Oliver.
Lay it on me.
Okay, Adrian, you ready for it?
I'm ready.
This isn't as long, so it's okay. Globalization. Well, we'll wait till round two. Maybe his will be longer. Okay. Globalization is redefining the economic, social, and cultural dynamics of contemporary societies in complex ways. From your point of view, Adrian, can you share with us a positive and a negative implication of globalization on the economy and the jobs of the future?
The local economy or the macro, larger national economy?
If you
Or
want,
both?
if either or, but if you
Okay.
local would be great if you could focus on that.
Okay, so how many of you have been to a city like New York City, Washington, D.C., Miami, New Orleans lately? Downtown in those big metropolitan areas, what do you see constantly? How about cranes? Cranes everywhere, right? We are in a period now where our country is experiencing some of the greatest economic growth in a long time. But if you notice in places like Rochester, you don't see as much outward development, do you? And so here is the issue of globalization. There's this new concept and idea of global cities that's beginning to emerge. And what it means is there are cities that are uniquely being equipped to participate in the reshaping of this economy that is connecting them in a way where some metropolitan areas aren't going to be able to. So when you think about transportation investments and capital infrastructure going in, roads, highways, housing stock, everything from workforce development programs in the P12 talent pipeline, all the way from preschool to high school and even higher education, and how those consortiums of colleges are enriching the human capital that exists in these places so they're able to attract jobs, high-paying, gainfully employing jobs. Some of the stuff you heard about a little bit earlier with artificial intelligence and some of the technology careers and the white-collar industries. But we don't see that happening as much here. And it's not that we can't necessarily do it, but something that I constantly see in my conversations, overseeing our economic development portfolio and workforce development at the Chamber, is Rochester, in many ways, Greater Rochester, can be its largest foe. Why? Because to your point earlier, Dr. Dillon, we are stuck in tradition. And what's happening is, in order for us to compete with the Philadelphias and New York Cities and the larger metropolitan areas, there are major structural changes and reforms that has to happen. You got to stand up a little bit. I deal with this every day, and I'm passionate about it because I believe in the potential of Rochester, but I'm also aware of the work we have to do as a community. If you Google Rochester, you know what comes up? Poverty. Childhood poverty. Some of the worst performing schools in the nation. Bifurcation along the lines of race, socioeconomic backgrounds, and a whole host of other challenges that don't make us the most attractive community to invest in. Want to know the largest venture capital firm, if you want to call it that, in this region? Not private dollars, New York State, and a whole host of dollars that go to RIT and U of R. And in President Trump's tax bill, he had a provision that said he wanted to create opportunity zones where our local economic development delegation would try to designate zip codes that will qualify based on their poverty rates according to the last U.S. Census tracts. And so a bunch of folks got together, determined where those investments would go. We had to submit them to New York State, which is Empire State Development. That's our economic development agency for the state. And then the governor has to actually submit his decisions on what zip codes actually go to the U.S. Treasury and then qualify for these private venture capital dollars, because what they want to do is redistribute some of the success in some places to folks who haven't got to see that. So mostly urban and rural America. But does New York State have the best reputation and relationship with this administration? No. And so to your point about the liberal snowflake and the guy with the MAGA hat, literally the guy with the MAGA hat, not being able to talk, and so a whole host of us here will suffer based on that inability to have a relationship and work together. And so what we have to do when conversations like mayoral control or city-county consolidation, which my mentor and boss talked about when he was the mayor, and then he published a report as lieutenant governor called the SAGE Report, where he talked about the numerous localities and authorities and municipalities in New York State that make it extremely difficult to do business here and more expensive than a lot of the rest of the country. We have to be willing to put aside our own biases and our own comfort for what's best for our region. Believe it or not, it doesn't matter how great any of us think our little suburban school districts are. When economic developers and site selectors look for relocations and expansion locations, they're looking at the city, the largest district that graduates and educates the largest amount of people. And does the C-suite of that company want to move here? Quality of life. And all these other factors and variables that go into, is Rochester the right place for my company? Well, it's more than that. Taxes and regulations is a part of it, but a conversation that we're having now in the economic development world is, what are all the other variables that contribute to the economic viability of a community? Do you have a highly skilled labor force? Do you have an over-policed, overly convicted workforce? Do you have a high impoverished community, which typically correlates with low skills to no skills? How about housing? Is there stability? Is there child care? There's a whole host of issues that go into that. The language barrier. I don't know how many of you know it, but after Hurricane Maria, we got a whole influx of Puerto Ricans here now, many of which who do not speak English. Though they have a great work ethic, the language barrier can seem to be pretty difficult in the job. So going back to your point about globalization and integrating a microeconomy into the macro global economy that's forming, what we all have to be ready to do is hear our leaders out. And are our leaders identifying the problems and impediments? Rightfully so. So I remember Bob told me when he was mayor, he talked about city-county consolidation, which would have made Rochester the 16th or 17th largest city in the country and would have qualified us for a whole host of federal dollars that we don't qualify for now as a mid-sized city. Those are the kinds of conversations as a community we have to be actually willing to have if we want to see opportunity and investment here. What about our largest school system? How long will one of the greatest districts in the country that I work with frequently in my role, because the chamber services 9 counties, I'm constantly in Pittsford, but I'm constantly in RCSD too. And oh, by the way, one of the most beautiful things that's happening in Greece right now, because if you walk around the halls, you will see one of the most diverse schools you've ever seen. Talk about a vision of America. All of that stuff is happening right here. But one thing I do admire about Greece that I must add, because they're willing to do the work, is with this influx of diversity, they recognize we have a school system that traditionally was not set up to service kids with some of the issues that they're coming along with. How many are familiar with the ACE scale? Adverse childhood experiences, right? So Greece, which traditionally has been white and suburban, children with low ACE scores, now has an influx of urban children who come with very high ACE scores. And at first, there was a punitive approach, because why is this kid skipping? Why is this kid asleep? Why are they aggressive? Why are they angry? But now they're recognizing we have to do professional development, to your point about the quality process, continuous improvement, to make sure that we can service the kids who are in our schools now just as good as we served the kids who used to be here yesterday. And so we need to be thinking about continuous improvement in regards to how does Rochester remain competitive in a globalizing world, whether we like it or not. Last point. What happens when you don't do that? And you have all of the same people around the boardroom who think the same, who act the same, who say things like, they'll never stop using film. They'll never stop reading the paper. Right? You go out of business. And I'm going to tell you the hard, harsh truth. We are competing with some of the largest metros in the world. The world. And if we do not update, innovate, we are going to be left behind. When all the cranes are gone and the housing is built, the flights are there, the roads are there, the infrastructure, the schools, the consortiums have gotten stronger and they attract some of the best talent and most brilliant minds in the world to come and teach their students. Those cities will be able to participate in the global economy in a way that we won't. And not only will we be 10 years behind 10 years ago, we'll be 50 to 100 years behind the rest of the world. The world is moving at an accelerated rate. I will tell you, you know what the most important skill you can teach a kid now? How to constantly adapt, evolve, and learn. You got your engineering degree from RIT today, and in 5 years, what you learned isn't even going to matter anymore. These are the challenges of today's labor market. How do you stay responsive?
Thank you. Jim, back to you, sir.
I love this city.
So Jim, as you reflect on your career, what advice would you give to students today that you wish someone had told you 5 or 10 years ago?
Well, that's a good question. That's a really good question. I think the best piece of advice that I wish I knew when I was still a student was really to approach the little stuff, the small details that occur through your life, to treat them, look at them from an outside perspective as far as the big picture of what you want to do. And what I mean by that is be conscious of how you interact and the way that you interact from the big picture of what your goals are in the future and where you want to be. The little things. When you look back on some of the biggest things that have happened, the biggest successes that you've had in your life, it's generally not from one big decision. It's a number of small details, small decisions that led you down that path where you are. It's rarely a major thing. It's a compounding of small little things that you do, a certain way that you do them, in a certain way you communicate those to other people that steer you down a path to be successful. And I think those little details really are what you should focus on. It's generally not a big payday, you won the lottery type deal. It's a number of small decisions that you make that lead you down that path, and it compounds. And it, when you're trying to, if you're working out and you're trying to lift more weight, you don't do it overnight. You start by working at it and doing the small things that lead you to get that goal. So.
Wonderful, thank you. Dr. Hauber, women face unique challenges and opportunities as they negotiate their careers. How do you see this taking shape in the future?
Ironic that I received this question. Well, women have, and in some cases most likely will continue to face challenges in the workforce. I think that we're at a time in history when the force is looking to level the playing field and promote more opportunities for women is greater than it ever has been. And as things start to take shape, I see things already taking shape and they'll continue to evolve in the future. But the different areas that I really see us evolving in is for us to start having more transparent career paths and salary structures for both men and women. The reality is where our workforce is right now, in order for companies and organizations to maintain their workforces and do what they need to do to prosper as business, they are going to need to promote, train, and retain women at an equal pace that they're going to have to do with men, or else they're not going to be able to fill the demands of the workforce. I also think that something that we're already starting to see take shape is this re-imaging of work, and we have our millennials to thank for that. Work is now something that we're starting to say, how is work going to look different? How are people going to work different? Where they're going to work is going to be different, and the hours that they're going to work are going to be different. And knowing that women, the challenge that we have faced for decades in the workforce is that work-life balance. And as work starts to be re-imaged, I really feel that that's going to work in our favor and that we're going to have greater opportunities to find that balance. And with those opportunities, women's role is going to reshape itself.
Great. In respect of time and moving forward, what we're going to do is we're going to give the last group of our panelists here an essential question. And I know some of you may have heard this before, but you're in the elevator, your elevator speech. You've got that 30 seconds to 1 minute. And thinking about...
Talking to one person on the panel down there.
Thank you. No! I did not say that, Dr. Dillon. No. In seriousness. So we've heard a lot of themes that have been coming up. So here's your 30-minute speech, or 30-second speech, really. No pun intended. Yeah, you rattled me. What would you say to somebody who is getting on that elevator in terms of what do you view as the essential skills and dispositions of tomorrow's citizens, and your recommendation for those people that are going into the workforce in terms of what it is that you're doing right now in your world?
I think the skill sets are back in. We need to do more STEM for what I see in the manufacturing world and what's required, and we have to go back. The focus has been BOCES does a great job, but if you've got a junior in high school, you've already lost him as far as we're concerned in the manufacturing industry. We're starting to go back now with the educators I'm working with, and we're educating 8th graders and younger to try and get them into the plant tours and to start looking at the skills. Problem solving, science, math, those are the skills that people need to take a look at. And very quickly, problem solving is paramount, and the interaction that Jay talked about, and the students here were working in the clubs, the robotics teams that you see, those are great
involvement.
Yep.
Good. Thank you, sir.
We need teachers, right? The shortage of teachers in this country is a problem that nobody's talking about at a deep, deep level. Mm-hmm. But we need people that are teachers in the community. We need people that are facilitators of learning, people that can activate conversations and discussion. So if I was looking for a key skill, how do we generate another group of folks that can teach and help folks to learn together?
Thank you.
On that note, we were at a STEM meeting at MCC, and it was brought up that there are only 2 colleges in New York State that teach technology teachers, that graduate technology teachers, and that's Buffalo State and Oswego. That's it. So you wonder why you can't teachers don't know technology. You haven't got technology teachers. You don't even have universities teaching.
Thank you. Dr.
Same
Rush.
question.
Yep, same one.
I think the most important thing really is problem solving, as Jim said, and I think going back to what Dr. Dillon said in his keynote, okay, is, and I don't think you used the phrase critical thinking, but critical thinking skills are truly important. I mean, the ability to identify problems, analyze the situation, analyze the problem domain, come up with solutions, and then construct the solutions. And I just want to say, and it's very incongruous for me to be saying this, there has been too much of an emphasis on STEM, okay, and you have left out the arts. And I think you need all of those skills. It's STEM augmented with arts is what you really need, because you're going to create, and I see this at RIT with students, I saw this when I was working in industry too, is that students who are only trained in STEM do not know how to work with other people. And it's really important for people to socialize. I think that was the word that Keith used. So
30 seconds, huh?
Ready, set.
One of the coolest things that's happened in the last generation is our understanding of the difference between IQ and EQ. And that for most of us are the source of things like happiness and satisfaction and working well with others and is in the EQ domain. So I want to share with you really quickly next level. I invite you to go home and Google CIQ or Judith Glaser. CIQ is conversational intelligence. Judith sadly passed away last week from cancer, but she leaves behind a 30-year legacy. I had the opportunity, still in, for the last year of doing some training with her, of phenomenal research into exactly what needs to happen in conversation, human being to human being, to create connection, to create safety, to create inclusion. And what doesn't happen in those conversations if either party or both feels not safe and excluded. And her work is not just rooted in the social sciences. She has done phenomenal work in the neurological sciences of exactly what happens in our brain when we are in conversation. And so we can talk about EQ till the cows come home, my level of self-awareness, interpersonal skill, great skills. Understanding how I work, how my feelings work, conflict resolution. But I can have that knowledge and still not have the skill to negotiate it in conversation with another human being. And our relationships take place in conversation. These are skills that we can teach children. We can teach adults. We can teach them about the skills. We can teach them about exactly what is going on neurologically and why, when I am in a conversation with somebody and there is not safety, you can't do problem solving, you can't co-create, you can't do anything. And it has a whole lot to do with just who we've been neurologically for millions of years. That to me is next level, and it is something that we can teach kids and how to be more adept in conversation in their relationship with others.
I'm going to offer a variation on some of what has already been said, including by Dr. Raj, which is to say, I'm very concerned that the conversation about education, and higher education in particular, in my context, has devolved in our society such that we connect it explicitly with, well, what are you going to do with that? Meaning that there's a specific job outcome that we want for higher education. So I think the essential skill is actually a way of being, which is the liberal arts. And I mean that broadly construed. I'm all for STEM education. My God, I have a BS degree in computer science and math. But the part that's missing for us, if I knew about computer science what I knew in 1985 when I graduated from college, it would be a sad, sad day, even for the 13 years that I did software development. the fact that we are going to change, and as Adrian reminded us, in the students who are going to graduate in 2030, we have no clue what it's going to look like for them with regard to a job market or specific professional preparation. I teach at an institution that has both liberal arts and has professional programs. We do physical therapy to history. We do religious studies to art. We do theater to social work. We do all of those things, but the heart that beats underneath all of it is the liberal arts. And it is because that is the part that makes us ask the broad questions about who we are, what does it mean to be human, how do we think critically, how do we find sources of knowledge, how do we engage them with analytical thinking, how do we use scientific method to help us figure out answers that we don't even know the questions about right now. All those things are essential to education. And if we're educating for the job that's available now, was it you who said we're already 50 years behind? We're already 50 years behind. And so the essential skills really are about how you integrate these things together and retain the thing that has lost popularity in society, which is to say that underneath all of this, the English major may be better off.
Thank you.
Get comfortable. No, I think I've spoken enough for the next one too. I'll just say this. I think curiosity is important. And there was talk today about being more inclusive and about being attracted and drawn towards different. And I feel like we have to start cultivating curiosity within people. We have to get them to a point where they can suspend their judgment. Just stop thinking you know everything, and that everything has to be explained in your language, with your dialogue, and your... That's what we have to get away from. So we have to make people intellectually curious so they're actually drawn to different. And I feel like once we get there, we'll have a much more inclusive society where we can appreciate people for who they are, not what we think they have to be, the way they have to be, but appreciating folks for who they are. There's a conversation right now about, is America still a melting pot or a salad bowl? Still one thing, but comprised of various different parts that you appreciate uniquely for what they are. No longer is there this pursuit to assimilate or conform into one uniform idea of what it means to be an American. That's why I think curiosity is so important, especially right now where I personally feel as though who we are and what we represent and all the progress that's been wrapped up in our history that's led to even a room that looks like this is being threatened. And I don't care how great our technological advancement is. If we lose the human condition in the process, then what has it really gained us? And so to me, it's important that as we advance in technology and STEM and what you refer to without saying, but STEAM, which is the augmentation of the arts, we also have to ensure that we continue to cultivate the human condition. At some point, technology is going to be a profound weapon of which we have never seen before. And without strong morals and ethics, what impact will that have on the world that we live in? We constantly hear about things, nope, 30 seconds.
Thank you. At this time, I do want to sincerely give our thanks to each and every one of you for sharing your time, your expertise this evening, your insights. We are deeply grateful and are better for this conversation this evening. So again, thank you so much to each and every one of you. This time I'm going to turn it back over to Cass Wheeler. She has some comments she wants to make.
Thank you. I've learned so much from you this evening. Thank you so much. I'm sure we'll have lots to talk about with my colleagues as we continue to process. When you all came tonight, I handed you a folder and I said, there's a map in that folder and I wanted you to go to a breakout session. Some reason I had hoped there would be lots and lots of need for lots and lots of breakout sessions. But as I look around the room, it seems to me that it might be a waste of time to move you all. So if it's okay with you, I'd like to stay here and ask Cheryl Dobberton and her team to lead us through the next reflection phase of our conversation tonight. So without Cheryl, thank you.
Hi, everybody, and we know we're close to the end of time, but we want to make sure to elevate your voice in this conversation. You've heard a lot from experts and from the districts, but we don't want to lose the opportunity for you to highlight to the district in particular things that you heard that are of utmost importance. And so we're passing out an index card to you, and on the front of the card, we'd like you to elevate something that you heard that you want to make sure the district hears. You know, is there something in the presentation tonight that you think the district should be deeply considering or integrating or not forgetting? So please add that to the front of the card. And on the back of the card, if you're willing to give us your contact information and a way that you can support the conversation, something that you can contribute to next steps, we'd appreciate that too. So what shouldn't we forget from tonight? Who are you and what can you contribute on the back? And we'll collect those from you on your way out this evening. Thank you so much.
No, I don't think we do. I think our job is done.
Okay.
So where?
That's where my days of meetings go. I like to have 3 back-to-back assignments. You have to be late. No way. I'm not.